All right, in this video we're going to look at multiplying fractions. Multiplying fractions is probably the easiest thing I think to do in fractions because as long as you can multiply fractions. There's no need to simplify, there's no need to find the lowest common denominator. The only thing is when you get fractions, so let's go down through the questions. Okay, so when we get to questions like question 4, where you have mixed number, that becomes problematic because you're going to have to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. But we'll cover all the questions on this sheet. So if you are having a little bit of trouble, we'll definitely get to those harder questions at the end. But let's just start off with some basic ones because you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean by we just multiply the fractions and why is it so easy? So our first one is 3/4 times 1/5. Now you put everything over one fraction, so I'm going to just draw the vinculum, the line separating the numerator and the denominator. And on the numerator, we just multiply the 3 and the 1. So whatever is on the top gets multiplied together, and then whatever is on the bottom gets multiplied together. So effectively, I am left with 3 over 20. Whoops. Now, you must simplify if you can, but in this case, we don't need to. So your answer is just 3 on 20. All right, let's scroll down because I don't want to do those actually. I'm just looking as we go. Let's have a look at K. It's a quick one for K. Okay, so the reason I'm showing this one is because sometimes when you multiply, especially if you've got bigger numbers, it can be quite difficult. Okay, so at the top we have 8 times 4, and on the bottom we have, oh sorry, I'm just thinking ahead. Get rid of my 4 and write 3, and 11 times 4 on the bottom. Now to make that easier, you can see, well, is there any number on the top that can cancel with the number on the bottom? So I'm going to do this in a different color, red. So this 8 and the 4, because they have a common factor, so 4 goes into 4 obviously, but also into 8, that actually simplifies to 2 over 1. So what I am left with now is 2 times 3 over 11 times 1. Now you don't have to do that, but it is an easier way just to, if you have trouble simplifying. So I'll show you the other way if we didn't cancel out. So 2 times 3 is 6 over 11 times 1 is 11. Now let's just go back here and say, all right, let's keep it as 8 times 3 and 11 over 4. And let's not do any cancellation. Whoops. I'm very good at concentrating today. So 8 times 3 is 24. 11 times 4 is 44. Okay, so now you're required to simplify that. So the highest common factor in 24 and 44 is 4. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 4. So 24 divided by 4 gives me 6, and 44 divided by 4 is 11. So either method is fine. These multiplications weren't that difficult, so it was okay. But you might come across ones that are just going to be too complicated to multiply, and therefore you'd have to simplify like I've done in red there. All right, let's move down to the next question. Whoops, it's still part of the same question. All right, question 2. Okay, so this time we have, you can see 1/3 of. Of is the same as saying multiply. So we're going to say, all right, to take 1/3 of 18, I just multiply. Now, you can see we have a fraction here, but we don't have a fraction here. But you can turn it into a fraction by just making it 18 over 1. So now I have on the top 1 times 18, and on the bottom 3 times 1. So 18 divided by 3. How many times does 3 go into 18? 6. Okay, so 1/3 of 18 is 6. And you should also know that's the same as saying, all right, if I'm taking 1/3 of 18, that's the same as 18 divided by 3. But you're not always going to get a nice integer, a whole number. So let's move down and do, let's say, G. I'll just clear that. So G is 4/5 times 100. Okay, so you can work out 1/5 of 100 and then multiply it by 4, but what we're going to do is keep it simple by turning that into a fraction. Now you can do it two ways. Let's simplify first. So on the top, 4 times 100, and on the bottom I have 5 times 1. 5 and 100 can be simplified, so I might just highlight that in red, circle them in red. So basically this is 100 divided by 5, which is 20. And then on the bottom we have just 1 times 1. 20 times 4 is 80, and then on the bottom we have 1. And you don't usually write fractions or integers as 80 over 1, it's just 80. Now we can do it the other way. Okay, so if you don't want to do this cancelling out here, you don't have to. So we're going to be left with 400. Okay, so 4 times 100 is 400, and then 5 times 1 is 5. So it might be a little bit harder to do 400 divided by 5, but it's not that difficult. So we can say, all right, how many 5s go into 100? There's 20, and I've got 400, so it's going to be 80. Some of you might do 5 into 400. Okay, do it that way, because 400 over 5 is the same as writing it like this. Okay, so you need to be able to solve harder ones like this. Okay, so there's numerous ways you can do it. Okay, so I've given you 2 ways to do it here, and this one where we got the cancelling is probably the better of the 2, or the easier of the 2. Okay, I'm just hearing kids at the front. I think my son might be coming through the front door. Let's just keep working until he does. Let's do H. So question H, we have 3 over 7 times 77. Okay, and I'm going to write that as a fraction. And 7 times 1. Okay, so is there a number on the top that can be cancelled by a number on the bottom? And there is. So I'm just going to circle it in red. And I strongly encourage you to do exactly the same, so you can see when you go back to your working out what you actually did. So 77 divided by 7 is 11, and then on the top we have the 3. So that became 11, and that became 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. And then we have 33 over 1, but we don't write, we can write 1 times 1 here, and 1, but effectively it's just 33. Another way you can do it, which I didn't show you before, is you can say, well, I want 3/7, but what if we just did 1/7? So if I just did 1/7 of 77, that means I'm doing 77 divided by 7, which is 11. And how many do I want? I wanted 3 lots of that. So I've got to take 3 times 11, gives you 33. This way is really good, especially when you're working with percentages, because you do the same kind of working out when you're doing percentages. So you work out what one part of it would be, and then you multiply it by how many you wanted. So we wanted 3 parts, so that's why I multiplied it by 3. Okay, let's move on to question 3. Okay, question 3 I haven't done, but I'm assuming it's different because we're going to end up maybe with a mixed number. We'll just see. So question A is 5 over 2 times 7 over 3. I can't do any cancelling out. Oh, actually, I'll write them first before I decide that. So there's nothing on the top that can be cancelled with the bottom. So 5 times 7 is 35, and 2 times 3 is 6. How many times does 6 go into 30? Goes in 5 times, and then we have 5 remainder. So it's 5 and 5, 6. So these ones here are exactly the same method of multiplying, but you end up with a mixed number. So you need to be able to convert from an improper fraction to a mixed number fraction. All right, let's move to question 4. So this is where we have to convert from a mixed number into a improper fraction. So let's just go back to that. And if you're having a bit of trouble with this, you should go back to the video where I go from improper to mixed number so that you can understand how to do it. But here we have, so I'm going to write them both, and I'll just do the working out underneath. So this one here, 1 3/5, I'm dealing with fifths. So I'm going to write the 3/5 here, and the 1 I can write as 5/5. And basically there's an imaginary plus sign in there. Okay, so that's why I've put the plus here. So I've rewritten the number 1 as 5 over 5, and then the 3/5 underneath. And then I'm going to do the same to 2 and 1/3. So the 1/3 can stay, and the 2 I'm going to rewrite as 6 over 3, because 6 divided by 3 is 2. And I need the same denominator to be able to add them together. Okay, so 5 and 3 gives you 8. When we're adding fractions that have the same denominator, we're only adding the top part. Okay, so you can see I've got 5/5 here, and I'm adding another 3/5. So how many fifths do I have in total? I have 8 of them. Then on the other side, I have 6/3 and 1/3. So in total, I have 7/3. And then we can just apply the multiplication. But before I do that, I'll do this line just to make sure there's nothing that can be cancelled out. And I've already checked and there can't be. So 8 times 7 is 56. And then 5 times 3 is 15. 15 doesn't go into 56, so I don't get a whole number. But it does go in, how many times? 3. So 3 times 15 is 45, so I'm left with 11. Okay, so 3 times 15 is 45, and the 11 came from seeing what's remaining. So 56 minus 45 gives you the 11. Let's do another one there, because these are the harder ones. Okay, I'm going to skip and do C. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that 3 as something over 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, so there's 12 over 4 is the same as the number 3. And 2 I'm going to write in fifths. So 2 times 5 is 10. And we've got 2/5. Okay, so add these together, I get 13 quarters. Add these together, I get 12 fifths. And then we rewrite. So 13 times 12, 4 times 5. And I can see there is one there that I can simplify, because 12 and 4 have a common factor, which is 4. Okay, so that's now going to simplify. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that becomes 3 and that becomes 1. So 13 times 3 is a lot easier to do than 13 times 12. And then on the bottom we have 1 times 5. So 13 times 3 is 39. And then 1 times 5 is 5. How many times does 5 go into 39? It goes in 7 times, and we have 4 remaining. Okay, so they're quite difficult. So if you are having a bit of trouble, make sure you see me if you need some help. All right, let's just do question 5. So judging by these ones, cancelling, I think, occurs with all of them. Or maybe they're just a mixture. Oh, they are just a mixture. Okay. So I was just looking at the first one. So let's just go through that one. So 6/5 times 8/3. So if we rewrite that as 6 times 8, my handwriting is getting a bit sloppy, sorry. 5 times 3, I can see the 6 and the 3 cancel out to be 2 and 1. So 2 times 8 is 16. 5 times 1 is 5. And then I'm left with 3 and 1/5. Okay, so they're just a mixture of them. Remember, of means multiply. So you do need to change this 5 and 1/3 into a mixed number. Let's just go and do 8, just because it's another one that can be cancelled out, and it's a good example of why you should cancel. So let's do 15 times 8 on the top, and then 4 times 5 on the bottom. So I can actually see the 15 and the 5 cancel to become 3 over 1, and the 8 and the 4 cancels to become 2 over 1. So effectively I now have 3 times 2 and 1 times 1, which is just 6. Now, if you had to do that without cancelling, 15 times 8 is very difficult. So 15 times 8 is 90, I think. Let me just think. No, 120. Yeah, 120, sorry. And then 4 times 5 is 20. And then 120 divided by 20 is 6. So you can do it that way, but you might be thinking for a while what 15 times 8 actually is. So a bit tricky, but make sure you have a go at all those other questions. The solutions are here, but you also need to come and see me if there is anything you have trouble with, because even though multiplication is easy, it's these questions here in question 4 where you need to do the conversion that are a bit tricky. Okay, good luck.